United States. And today that figure has risen to well over 1 million. And you don't have to take my word for it. Those aren't my figures. They were issued by the great John A. MacDonald himself. One wonders why. Emigration on a grand scale. He can't be proud of it, surely. 1 million Canadians who couldn't find a job. 1 million Canadians who couldn't earn a decent living wage. And Canada, in terms of natural resources, one of the richest countries in the world. Is it any wonder then that we say there must be reform? Reform, so that 1 million expatriates can return if they choose. Reform for those who've been on half-time at reduced wages. But reform for those whose property has been decreasing in value these past 10 years. In fact, reform for all Canadians.
The good cause wins.
We have a lot of support.
And what
Have you seen today's Globe?
Look, there's still a week to go, and that's about the last paper you should read. Anything can happen.
You're being asked to approve the sale of goods we produce in abundance to our neighbors, all 63 million of them. So why all the fuss? In these hard times, it makes sound economic sense. Well, I'll tell you why. One, we'd be discriminating against the English. Two, that direct taxation would have to be introduced. And if the Tories were returned to power, I have no doubt that it would be. And three, that it is veiled treason. If scaremongering is all they can resort to, no wonder we're going to win this election. Yeah. And we are going to win it, Mr. Alexander.
Now look here. I spy strangers.
What are they doing here?
Come to pick up a few pointers?
Throw them out! Throw them out!
I've made a couple of converts.
What happened?
Someone tried to kill Adam. Come on, let's get out of here.
These are great. Well done. Just what we need. Deirdre, how would you like to lend Harold a helping hand? You know, show him how it's done.
Fine.
Harold, would you canvass the west side of Main Street area? As a matter of fact, Deirdre's just offered to lend you a hand.
Sure.
Wonderful. Stephen, would you do me a favor? Would you pop around to this address? We've just had an offer of another buggy. John, take a look at these. I'm telling you we're going to win. I've never been more confident of anything in all my life, never.
Then do your best to reassure me.
I'm telling you we've got them on the hop. Have you seen the Courier yet? They've even jumped on the free trade bandwagon around.
Look, I hate to put a dampener on things, but it's the security arrangements I'm more interested in.
It's all under control.
My security.
As far as this evening is concerned, the entire building is going to be searched by the police with a fine-tooth comb a half hour before the meeting is scheduled to begin. And on top of that, there are going to be 4 men in plain clothes stationed at strategic points around the hall. They're all crack shots, John, all 4 of them. So at the first sign of trouble, a man won't stand a chance. You'll see.
What about the crowd? Are they going to be searched, too?
I'm afraid there we have a bit of a problem. Seems the local constabulary weren't too sure what we wanted done with the rotten fruit and eggs. Oh, come on, John, just relax. I'm telling you, it's all in the bag.
Are they going to check those that enter the hall or not?
I've even nominated 2 of our own men to lend a helping hand. And on top of that, the Cameron fellow is due to arrive any second. I've just sent Bridget to meet him.
Well, that's something, I suppose. Mowat says he's the best detective in the province.
Well, now, that wouldn't be very difficult, considering he's the only detective in the province.
With an excellent record.
Well, then, so you see, there we are. Any way you look at it, there's nothing to worry about.
Mr. Harris sorted the hotel reservation himself.
Harris?
Mr. Lamb's new campaign manager.
Oh, I see.
Sent to us from Ottawa. He's been an inspiration to us all.
Just what the doctor ordered, eh?
Well, morale has never been higher. If we win this election, and I'm sure we will, it'll all be thanks to him.
Confidence, that's what I like to hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. I really have been chattering on.
Please, after my own company for 3 hours in the train, I find it most refreshing.
I don't usually get so carried away.
I recognize the symptoms. Election fever, you were saying?
Oh, nothing really. Just that I wouldn't be surprised to see Mr. Harris seek a seat himself come the next election.
Oh, he's an ambitious man too, is he?
If you ask me, he's a born leader.
What about you? What are your aims?
Same as most women, I guess.
A home and a family, eh? With political overtones or not, eh? Oh, I'm sorry, I've embarrassed you. But I rather gathered from your conversation...
Oh, no, not at all. I don't think Mr. Harris sees anyone in that particular light.
Huh?
And as for me, well, I'm just another volunteer.
Oh, girl. Oh.
Well, here we are at the Liberal headquarters.
Yeah, and the opposition's just a stone's throw away, I see.
And there's David.
Oh, David who?
David Alexander, the son of our worthy opponent.
Oh. Aggression isn't confined to the one party, then?
Well, Mr. Lamb doesn't condone such behavior, I can assure you. They're nothing but louts, the pair of them. Fortunately, the boy seems to be all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Lamb should be in his office now. Do you want to freshen up first or meet him?
Neither. You said that on the night of the shooting, there were a couple of spies in the camp.
That's right. Mr. Alexander himself and Mr. Miller, they sneaked in the back.
To attend the meeting on an assassination.
Mr. Harris is of the same opinion.
He is he? Well, then I'm sure he and Mr. Lamb will understand my desire to see the Tories first.
You must have some idea who they were.
No, Mother. Honestly.
I think you're lying. We don't get that many strangers in these parts.
Even if I am, don't fuss, please. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself.
If only you were.
I can promise you.
You are exactly like your sister.
Oh, Mother!
Need someone behind you the whole time.
At least let me finish the chapter.
No.
A couple of questions I was asked today. Maybe he can use them in his speech.
This is an important meeting, and I want to make sure we get as big a turnout as the Liberals.
It's so provincial. There are plenty of farm children, only too willing to earn a few cents. Why can't they distribute the beastly pamphlets?
Because that is exactly what they won't do.
Marguerite and Armand will keep.
She's just received a visit from his father.
He makes a promise never to see Armand again.
But of course she does, doesn't she?
Wait and see.
Oh, I'm surprised at the pair of you.
50 for you, 50 for me.
Romantic nonsense.
Mother, it's a classic.
That's exactly what Madeline said about Sarah Crewe, or whatever that other nonsensical piece was called.
There's no comparison. Dumas has a great understanding of the human condition. He knows what it is to love and be loved.
Oh, you speak from experience, of course.
I was in love once, or at least I thought I was.
Anyone we know?
These things are best kept to ourselves, pet.
In this instance, I think you're right, Mother. You'd both be frightfully shocked. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's my fault.
The time and place of the meeting?
Oh, I rather hope to have a word with Mr. Alexander in private.
Mother, a gentleman to see father. Come on, Madeline.
I'm Mrs. Alexander. I'm afraid my husband's rather busy at the moment. Can I help?
My name is Cameron, Inspector Cameron.
The Provincial Detective.
Not in the modern sense of the word, I hope.
We've been expecting you.
News travels fast.
Since the shooting, there's been talk of little else.
I can imagine.
We haven't had so much excitement since the Colored Plantation Chorus gave a concert some 3 years back.
In the same hall, I presume.
It's the closest thing we have to a theater.
Ah, yes, the theater. Perhaps that's it. I was wondering if you yourself hadn't been an artiste.
I beg your pardon?
Poetry readings,
lecture not even in the amateur sense.
I feel sure we've met. I've seen you somewhere before.
I don't think so. If we had, I'm sure I'd remember.
So you're from Glasgow?
Whatever gave you that idea?
Well, your accent. And you called your daughter Pet. Hardly a Canadian expression.
No, I've never been to Glasgow.
No, but you live close by.
I was a child when my parents came from Scotland.
And you've never been back since?
I've always regarded Canada as my home. I'll tell my husband that you're here.
Oh, thank you very much.
Michael Alexander. How do you do?
How do you do? It's unfortunate that I've had to call upon you at such a busy time.
I'm only too happy to be of assistance.
We're as keen as anyone to find out who took a shot at Lamb.
This is Edward Miller, my campaign manager.
It's Miller?
Well, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I must go home and change.
7:30, prompt.
I wouldn't miss it for the world. Good luck. And to you, Inspector, with your investigations.
Oh, I'm sure both results will be most satisfying.
Yes, well, I'll just go and check to make sure everything's all right, Paul.
You have a very charming wife, Mr. Alexander.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
Have you always lived here?
We came shortly after our marriage. Why do you ask?
I never forget a face. I feel sure I've had the privilege of meeting your wife before.
I'm intrigued.
Did you travel much?
Since our marriage, hardly at all.
Oh, no matter. Something will strike a chord. So you're not a local man, Mr. Harris?
No, I've just rented a house here for a month or two.
Any intention of making it your home?
No. I'm afraid I'm a city man. I don't think I could stand living here all the time.
A bit of a backwater, eh?
Well, I think this election is the most excitement they've had around here for years. Can you imagine what it's like the rest of the time?
Yeah, you seem to have made a lot of friends.
I suppose I have. All part of the job, you know, getting everyone working happily together.
Yeah.
Now, if you excuse me, I must take my leave. I have to change.
Oh, you look fine to me.
Yes, well, actually, I'm going to meet somebody later on. John, now remember, just relax. Everything's going to be fine.
You want to see me, Inspector? Come up to my office.
Charming man here, Mr. Harris.
Would you like a drink? I have some scotch.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes. Like most candidates, liberal or conservative, I assume Mr. Alexander has a political arsenal, ridicule, distortion, slander, lies, but somehow I can't quite see assassination being one of the weapons he would employ.
You're not over fond of politicians, I
On the
take it.
contrary, I've always held Sir Robert Peel in the highest esteem.
The hand that provided, the hand that feeds.
Touché.
Confidentially, I may say that I agree with you. I found it hard to swallow that Alexander could somehow be mixed up in this affair. I mean, I'm hardly Abraham Lincoln.
Well, let's look at it from a more personal view, eh?
I have always lived my life according to the good book.
Oh, I'm sure you have. I've noticed that Mrs. Alexander and her 2 children take a very active interest in the campaign.
My son lives in Newfoundland and is more interested in zoology than politics. As for my wife, she hasn't been at all well these past 3 years.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
In fact, she's been confined to a nursing home for the past 2.
So you live alone?
Yes.
No domestic staff? I'm sorry, Mr. Lamb, but if I'm to find a motive, I have to ask these things.
I have an elderly domestic servant and a gardener come odd job man. Perhaps there was no motive, just someone a trifle unhinged.
Even then, the act has some basis.
But then again, maybe it wasn't me they were after at all.
Yes, that thought had occurred to me.
Yeah, but if it wasn't, then who and why?
Hello? Fine. No. Actually, couldn't have called it a better time. I was just getting out of the bath. Thanks for the present. That was you, wasn't it? I might have guessed. Well, thanks a lot. Campaign. It's going very well. You might be relieved to know. No, I haven't had any yet. I thought I would pour myself some while I was getting dressed. Hold on a second. I might as well pour myself some now. Hold on. Smells wonderful. You know something? I'm really quite flattered. Well, I suppose because in spite of everything, you still care about me. For a time there, I sort of wondered. I even thought that it was you who was perhaps waving that pistol around. No, of course I don't. I was just joking.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Lamb, but it's 7:20, you know.
I'm afraid I'll have to leave, Inspector. Has Mr. Harris returned yet?
I haven't seen him.
Well, he went home to change, so drop in on your way to the meeting. He may have lost track of time.
Yes, Mr. Lamb.
We can continue later if you like.
Oh, something may occur to me in the course of the evening.
Where would you like to meet? At your hotel?
The Delmage Memorial Hall. What idea was that?
Harris arranged. Well, did you find him? What's the matter? Is he all right?
He's dead. Mr. Harris is dead. He could twist anyone around his little finger. The women especially.
Yeah. So as far as the party was concerned, he was great a fan, eh?
Well, as I told you when we first met, we'll win. And he'll have been responsible for our success.
Was he always in politics, do you know?
I think so. He didn't take much interest in anything else the time he was here.
Which was about 3 months, I believe.
About that, yes.
Ah. Well, I thought there was this much money in politics. The rent on this house must have been quite substantial.
Oh, I think he had a lot of money of his own. I believe he inherited quite a sum from his father. Something he disapproved of strongly.
I don't follow.
Inherited wealth, privilege.
Oh.
He was very much against it. Hence the interest in politics.
Ah. Rebellion, eh?
Against his father.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sure there's nothing I can do to help, Inspector?
Oh, you have already. A great deal.
seemed to loathe everything he stood for.
Little time for socializing, then.
Well, once the election got into full swing, no.
Before then?
He didn't let up for a minute.
Huh?
And he was a stranger in town. Looking like... being the sort of person he was invited everywhere. He must have met almost everyone. The ones that mattered, anyway.
So many particular attachments?
Not that I know of, no. If he did, he was very discreet.
Did he write poetry?
I don't think so, no. Have you found something?
Well, I presume it's poetry. Every line begins with a capital. For in any roofed house I emerge not, nor in company, but just possibly with you on a high hill, or possibly with you sailing at sea, or on the beach of the sea, or on some quiet island, here to put your lips upon mine, I permit you.
Well, I wouldn't have thought that was his cup of tea at all.
Maybe somebody sent it to him.
Well, who is it signed?
No. But perhaps he did form some particular attachment after all.
Well, at least the murderer showed some imagination.
The wine was poisoned?
Oxalic acid.
Eh?
It has a corrosive action on the gastrointestinal tract, causes massive hemorrhaging.
Yeah. Where would you have got it from?
Bottom of the garden, probably.
Deadly nightshade?
Rhubarb leaves or spinach. All you have to do is reverse Mrs. Beaton's serving suggestion. Save the liquid and discard the leaf.
Ah. And whoever it was knew the victim quite intimately, then?
You have your motive at last.
Maybe.
Hell, with due respect, Miss...
Simpson. Bridget Simpson.
Hell hath no fury.
I don't think it's as simple as that.
It'll be a woman, mark my words.
According to Bridget, there was no particular interest.
A woman scorned.
It was his career that was important.
In which case, it's back to politics.
Maybe. Or a mixture of both. Are they very busy at your headquarters just now?
Yes, most of them are out canvassing.
Ah, good. I rather want to put Dr. Chisholm's secretarial skills to the test. Come on, Archie.
No, this is not the one.
Nothing much, huh?
I slipped S. Not an A.
We'll try that one. I'll take a look upstairs.
I was hoping to catch the train this evening.
I need your expert opinion.
Any fool can compare a typeface.
On top of that, there's your interest in politics. This is a marginal seat. I thought you'd like to be here for the resultant person.
It's not this one either. Is that the lot?
Yeah. It's across the road to the Tory headquarters there, Archie.
Good. I can use a change of air.
The old brigade in good senses. Thanks for your help.
Oh, yeah, the Madeleines. Yeah, her mother must have told her a dozen times not to leave them lying about.
Most young girls like a bit of romance in their lives.
The not so young, too.
Tale of Truth. Charlotte Temple, eh?
You know, I caught Mrs. A herself reading that one the other day.
Sounds fascinating.
And yet there she is, always ticking off poor Madeline.
Oh, any luck?
Nope, and I think that's the lot.
Oh, well, we've only the two. Oh, no, wait, I'd completely forgotten. There's another one in the boss's office.
Oh, may we? Archie, here.
The rest of this poem gets worse.
Eh?
And thus touching you would I silently sleep and be carried eternally. That's romantic nonsense, too, if you ask me.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, Inspector.
This photograph of the Alexanders, the flowers, it's a wedding photograph. It's quite recent, isn't it?
No, it is. They've only been married about 4 years.
Oh, so Madeline and David...
Mrs. Alexander's by her first marriage.
They adopted his name.
Mrs. Alexander's suggestion.
Have you any idea why?
I think she just preferred it that way.
I see, thank you.
Eureka! Alistair, see for yourself. It matches perfectly. Alistair, did you not hear me? It was typed on this machine.
And I think I know by whom.
Eh?
I hadn't been a sergeant very long, a year at most. It was Edinburgh's most celebrated murder trial. The method, the motive are exactly the same.
What does that to do with this?
Apart from the choice of poison, she hasn't changed at all.
Ooh.
Ridiculous. I hardly knew the man. There's nothing I could tell the inspector that would be of
And on
any
the eve
help.
of the election, too, really, this is too much.
It must have something to do with the murder.
Has it, Dr. Chisholm?
Good of you to come, Mrs. Alexander.
What's this all about, Inspector? In case you've forgotten, we go to the polls tomorrow.
Of course, the last chance to convince the uncommitted. What time does the meeting begin?
At 7:30, sharp.
And you mustn't be late. Now, you go on. I'll join you as soon as the inspector's finished.
How long are you going to be, Inspector?
Oh, not too long, I hope. But I think you should follow your wife's suggestion.
Madeline will wait for me. Won't you, Madeline?
Of course.
I'll stay too if you like.
No, you go along with your father.
Now, you go along too, Archie. You won't hear your own views better expressed, I'm sure.
And what about yours?
Don't tell me you're a liberal, Inspector.
A liberal conservative.
I know, and a conservative liberal.
Uncommitted, in other words.
He always takes the easy way out.
We'll use your office if we may, Mr. Alexander.
All right. I'll send the buggy back to pick you both up.
You mustn't worry. I'll see to it that Mother's all right.
It's just past 7, Mr. Alexander.
I wanted to have a word with both of you. I'm a bit confused about your family history. I don't want to embarrass your mother.
Yes? What do you want to know?
Mr. Alexander is your stepfather. Does that mean there was a divorce?
No, our real father died when we were both quite little. We don't remember that much about it.
Oh, no, of course you wouldn't then, would you?
Except his voice. When I first heard your accent, Inspector, it may have been my imagination, of course, but I thought there was a distinct resemblance.
Oh, you were a Glasgow man then?
Edinburgh, I think.
Oh, my God. So your mother brought you up by herself until she married Mr. Alexander 4 years ago?
That's right.
Long time to be without a father.
We're still without, Inspector. Even though we took Mr. Alexander's name, I still think of myself as David Drummond. Excuse me.
Ah. It's been a long time. 24 years to be precise.
Since what, Inspector?
Time has been very good to you, Caroline.
Who told you my Christian name?
You're as beautiful now as you were then. The fascinating Mrs. Drummond.
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about.
I was giving a 2-week course. In my spare time, I used to go to the courts of law. One in particular. The case that was being tried there was hailed as the crime of the century.
Really, Inspector, this is ridiculous. I told you before I never set foot in Edinburgh.
I don't seem to recall saying that it was Edinburgh. But it was, wasn't it? The High Court of Justiciary. I was quite upset when I had to return to Glasgow. I'd never seen or met anyone quite like you. You behaved at the trial as if you were on some sort of picnic.
I was young. All that attention. You won't tell my husband and family, please. Especially David. He's very sensitive. Tell me you won't tell. Please, I beg you.
I don't think either of us will have much choice in the matter.
I don't understand.
No?
Mr. Harris. You think I'm responsible?
He was involved in a clandestine affair. Because of it, it was poison. This poem. Did you write it? Did you? From what I remember of your letters, the ones that were read at the trial, I mean, it's rather your style.
I've never seen this before in my life.
Why, Caroline? Is it history repeating itself? Did you become bored as you did the last time?
I hardly knew Mr. Harris. I only met him once. Twice at the most.
Or did he threaten to tell your husband? Was it the scandal you were frightened of?
I couldn't have had more than half a
Scandal
dozen
that would
words.
scotch your husband's chances of winning.
I didn't kill him. Just as I didn't kill my lover in Scotland. In case you have forgotten, I was acquitted.
No, Caroline.
I walked out of that court a free woman.
Not exactly a free woman. They didn't say you were guilty, but they didn't say you were not guilty. The verdict was not proven. The poor jury just couldn't believe that a girl that looked like an angel could do the work of a devil.
And it would be the same this time.
Mm-hmm. Harris's room was ransacked. What were you looking for? The letters? Did you commit yourself to paper again?
I didn't kill him. And you can't prove I did.
Can you prove that you didn't?
I don't have to. I do not have to prove anything.
If you want your past kept from your husband and children, you do.
You wouldn't.
Where were you on the night that Harris was killed?
I attended my husband's meeting.
The meeting was at 7:30. Harris had been dead an hour by then.
Home changing. You were here when I left the office.
You left here at 5:30. 2 hours, more than enough time to change, deliver the bottle, and get yourself to the meeting.
I arrived home at 6:15, and I did not leave until 7:10. If you don't believe me, you can have a word with the servants.
You can be sure that I will.
I didn't kill him, Inspector. I swear to you I didn't.
Someone in this office did.
I'm sorry to intrude, but I just found this. Would either of you care for a glass?
A fine speech, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Doctor. That's the point you made about the property boom. That went down very well, I thought.
And so it should. To blame that on the national policy is nothing short of ridiculous.
She can't still be talking to the inspector, surely.
If they're still with the inspector, you can be sure he has a good reason.
Well, they can't have gone home. If she said she'd meet us here, that's where she's going to meet us.
Oh, I'll go see what's keeping them.
Thank you, David.
Thanks for the wine, Miss Alexander.
You only drank one glass.
Where'd you get it from?
Out there.
Oh, left by the person who usually occupies these premises, the dealer in real estate.
I hardly think so. A strict teetotaler. More likely a well-wisher brought it in.
Aye.
Someone who knows it's the kind father buys himself.
That's so.
A second-class Burgundy for domestic use. He wouldn't offer it to guests. Well, what are you doing, Inspector Cameron?
Trying to put the cork back in.
Why?
Oh, I hate good wine to spoil. Besides, it may be needed in evidence. It's identical with the kind that did Harris in.
Is that why you wanted to talk to me alone? You think I killed him?
I wanted your opinion on something, Miss Alexander. I know you're fond of reading. What do you make of that?
Well, of course, I've seen it before. It's beautiful, isn't it?
I'm a Burns man myself.
And if I try very hard, I could tell you who wrote it.
Oh, it's from a published work.
Of course it is. You didn't think I penned this, did you?
The thought had occurred to me, yes.
I wouldn't know where to begin. It's not. Yes, of course, Whitman, Walt Whitman, an American poet. You've come across his work, surely.
Oh, yes, but not this particular piece.
To be quite truthful, I don't know it too well either.
Uh-huh.
We must have read it at school, or someone brought it to my attention.
Your mother?
Byron and Browning are about the only poets she reads.
Perhaps it was Mr. Harris.
Verse? Mr. Harris?
Oh, you know him then?
Not very well, no.
but well enough to know his taste in poets.
That was just the impression I got.
I don't think you're being altogether truthful, Miss Alexander.
I met him socially, that's all.
In fact, I think you know him quite well.
Someone's been talking. No, that's impossible. No one could have told you because no one knew.
When did you meet him? Eh?
It was when he first moved here. The tennis club dance. He was the most handsome man I'd ever seen. When he asked if all the dances on my card were spoken for, I almost fainted.
Who escorted you?
David, my brother.
Why?
And naturally, I didn't know who he was then. That Mr. Harris was a liberal, I mean. I didn't discover that until a month or so later. Not that it mattered. To me, at any rate.
And you met him again secretly, eh?
If my mother had found out, I'd never have been allowed out on my own again. I used to tell her I was calling on a friend or that I was going horseback riding.
To go to all that subterfuge, you must be quite taken with him, eh?
I was for a while. But he was just teasing me. I realized I was just a child in his eyes, that his affections lay elsewhere.
With whom? Have you any idea?
I never really thought about it before. Now that you asked, it could have been anyone. He was always asking me about someone or other, who they were in love with, whether or not they were engaged.
He was just using you then, eh?
I think he was. Which is why I wasn't too upset when he was late or couldn't be bothered to show up at all.
Where did you meet him?
The old Benson farm. It's been deserted for years.
Did you ever go to his house?
I may have found him attractive, Inspector, but I didn't lose all sense of propriety.
I didn't suppose for a moment that you had. So, the romance, for want of a better word, just fizzled out. There were no recriminations on either side.
I did try. Hoped to make him jealous for a while.
Oh, another man?
I think I've said too much already, Inspector.
Oh, your secret will be safe with me.
On one of the days that Mr. Harris didn't appear, I met somebody else. A groom from the local riding school. If Mother knew, well, you've seen what she's like.
One of these days she may surprise you. I think she understands a good deal more than you give her credit for.
Are you ready, Mother?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Drummond.
Yes, Inspector.
Could I have a word with you? Excuse us. That's done. Did you know that Mr. Harris and your sister were meeting secretly?
Secretly? What do you mean? Who told you that?
She did. She even hinted that she was in love with him.
That's ridiculous. Those stupid romantic novels she's always reading. Harris would never have done a thing like that.
Oh, you knew him well then?
Well, of course. Everyone in town knew him.
You stepped into the breach quite magnificently, Bridget.
Oh, it wasn't just me, Mr. Lamb. It was the whole team.
Well, no matter how it goes tomorrow, I plan to hold a celebration just to express my thanks.
You heard the reception tonight. We're going to win. I know we are.
You're really quite a determined lady when you want to be, aren't you?
Oh, I'm a little like Mr. Harris in that respect. If I believe in something, I'll do anything.
Will you lock up?
Of course. I've just got a few more names to add to the list of people I'm picking up and taking to the polls.
Very well, but don't stay up too late.
Oh, I'll be here to open up at 6 o'clock sharp.
What's going on here? I've been waiting at the hall.
I really am sorry, Mr. Alexander.
Are you sure there aren't any questions you'd like to ask me before we all go home?
You were at the meeting. Your alibi is already established.
Then we'll leave you. If you just pull the door to when you're ready to go.
I will indeed. Good night, Mrs. Alexander.
Every success tomorrow, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Dr. Chisholm.
You've nothing to worry about. I'm convinced of it.
I wish I shared your confidence.
And thank you for your assistance.
I trust we won't be hearing from you again, Inspector.
So long as there's a murderer out there, I can't promise anything. Night, Madeline.
Inspector?
David.
Inspector.
Well?
Well, what?
You know perfectly well.
Caroline, Mrs. Alexander, appears to have a foolproof alibi, too.
So, you were wrong?
Not necessarily. History does repeat itself. It's the form it takes that's not always the same.
It was the daughter, you mean?
During the 90-day trial in Edinburgh, the prosecution introduced some 60 letters and evidence.
Presumably that's what the murderer was looking for once the poisoned wine took effect.
I wonder. Assuming that Harris contemplated blackmail to win the election...
Thereby furthering his own political career.
Yes, I wonder where he hid them, eh?
Now that you've discounted the mother and the daughter, what hold could Harris have had over them?
The same as he always had. Unless I'm barking up the wrong tree with that poem. The only other alternative is that Harris somehow or other knew about Caroline's past. And it's a dirty business, politics, Archie. I think I know where these letters might be. If they exist. Come on. Yeah, Lord. Ah, congratulations, Bridget. You've been promoted, I see.
Oh, just a few last-minute details to attend to.
Tomorrow's the big day.
If it was Mr. Lamb you wanted to see, I'm afraid you've just missed him.
No, I'm here about the safe. I seem to remember seeing one upstairs. Do you know how to open it?
That's right. Mr. Hathaway gave us the combination.
Mr. Hathaway?
The lawyer. This is his office. Just letting us use it for the election. Yes, here we are.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know whether Mr. Harris used that or not.
I think he did. I'll turn up the lamp, will you, Archie?
Aye.
Getting warm. Now, the key from Harris's bedroom.
Letters.
Inflammatory stuff, no doubt. Addressed to the universally admired Mr. Harris.
By one of his conquests.
Probably from the one who murdered him.
Mrs. Alexander.
She was nearly sent to the gallows once before for writing compromising letters. If you were her, would you repeat the same mistake?
Don't ask me, Alistair. I don't have that kind of temperament.
On the other hand, a tendency to write passionate letters might run in families.
And a tendency to kill?
Well, we'll know soon enough when we've identified the writer. But that can wait a little.
Why?
Well, even I can make mistakes, Archie. And if I've made one now, it could prejudice the outcome of the election. So, first one result, then the other, eh?
I hear there was a very large turnout.
There must have been. At the time not taking anything to go by.
And the person who murdered Harris.
On the stage.
Are you going to let me in on the secret?
Here comes the returning officer.
As returning officer for the riding of South Dalmage, I am now able to give the result of the federal election, held this 5th day of March, 1891. The names of the candidates and the votes cast for each are as follows. Michael James Alexander, 8,637. John Gordon Lamb, 7,000. I therefore declare Michael James Alexander duly elected.
Congratulations, Mr. Alexander.
Inspector,
My condolences, Mr. Lamb.
Thank you, Inspector. All right, off to the celebration.
One moment, Mr. Alexander.
Wait until the morning, Inspector. There's well over 100 people waiting for us at the hotel.
I'll try not to take up too much of your time.
I take it it's about the murder.
Yes.
Do you know who it is?
There's a large dressing room on this side of the stage. If you'll all be kind enough to wait there with Dr. Chisholm.
This way.
Not my style at all, Inspector. You should know that better than most.
I was referring to the signature at the bottom.
Hardly a signature. Yours forever is typed like the rest of the letter, only me is handwritten.
You recognize it, nevertheless.
I can only tell you that it's not mine, Inspector.
Perhaps this second letter will help.
But it's almost like Madeline's, but the content, it's bordering on... Well, she's a mere child, Inspector.
19. Need I remind you of your own thoughts at the same tender age?
You're wrong. Madeline has led a very sheltered life. She's not that sort of girl at all.
I'm sure your parents found it equally difficult to believe.
What I was has nothing to do with it. You cannot signal her out because of me.
Here's another one. You recognize that?
My dearest friend... No, that's not Madeline's hand. The E's aren't remotely the same. It's more like...
Yes?
Oh, God, no.
That's enough, Inspector, please. No more.
David, don't be silly. Come down from there. It wasn't your fault. I understand, truly I do.
How can you? When I don't even understand it myself. Harris knew. How can I explain it? I admired him. He was the sort of man I wanted to be. He didn't make fun of me like a lot of people. There was an affinity. He seemed to take an interest in everything I liked. And then...
Are you saying this man made advances to you?
No. No, but I was foolish enough to start writing letters. And I was trapped. It was what he intended all along. If the election wasn't going too well, he was going to use them to persuade my stepfather to stand down. If that didn't work, he was going to leak the story to the newspapers. There would have been nothing left. Scandal would have ruined everything. I had to kill him.
No, David. You could have come to me. We'd have gone to the police. I'd understand. Honestly.
No. Nobody can.
So what are you going to do now?
There's only one thing I can't do.
Don't do it.
No. David, run. Hide. Well, you've got a chance.
Where to? From whom? You? The inspector? Myself? There'd never be an end to it. It always catches up with you in the end somehow.